Welcome to Elevate, the podcast where we dissect exceptional achievers who are consistently raising the bar personally and professionally to produce extraordinary results in investment real estate and ultimately in their lives. Now here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, are you ready to take it to another level? I know I am. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here. And I'm here with Dillon McGough. Dillon, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Tyler. I really appreciate you having me on the show today. Super excited to be here, my friend.
Well, it's absolutely our pleasure, and we're definitely looking forward to having an elevating conversation. And I want to welcome Elevate Nation back because this is the show where our mission is to identify and apply how the best of the best raise the bar personally and professionally to achieve greatness in real estate and beyond. And I want to remind everybody that this is a masterclass, so there's times where you need to pause, you need to rewind, you need to take notes. And this is for leaders and those who are looking to achieve uncommon results and purposeful outcomes through real estate investing and ultimately in their lives. And if you appreciate what we're doing, we would appreciate if you subscribe to our show, if you gave us a rating and a review, because it helps us reach more people. Our goal is to reach millions of people with this message because, there's too many people who are just tolerating their life. We want to live an uncommon life because we're willing to face our fears. We're willing to elevate our mindset. We're willing to apply the information immediately, take massive action. But not only that, we're willing to build a network. We're willing to build long-term relationships. And so, as we dive in here, I want to tell you a little bit about Dillon. In 2018, Dillon changed the course of his career from working in the political realm as a lobbyist in the healthcare industry to focusing on full-time real estate as both a multifamily investment broker and an investor with the start of his real estate investment company, East River Equity Group. And I know that this is a very brief bio, and there's so much more to this person. And so Dillon, tell me a little bit about, who are you behind the bio?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, Tyler. And so, I got my professional start back in 2013 after graduating from Michigan State University. And I immediately started working in the political realm where I ended up staying for about 5 years. I worked both on the public side as well as the private side. I worked for one of the big three autos in the government relations, AKA lobbying realm. I worked on the public side as a legislative director for a state representative, then came back out in my last political job as a lobbyist working for a large healthcare organization, focusing on representing the political interests of hospitals in the state of Michigan. And actually, before I left in 2018, like I said, I was working for this large scale association doing political work. And then throughout my time working in the political realm, I actually had my real estate license as well. And I was helping buyers on both the residential side, buyers and sellers on the residential side. And I was noticing, and it was nice to be able to do that alongside working in politics, but I was noticing that the guys and gals that were creating that true long-term generational wealth, they were the folks that actually own this real estate, the investment folks. And so what I did was I absolutely dove in and tried to learn as much as possible about creating generational wealth through multifamily real estate. And that came through, I dove into single family homes, invested in single family homes, some small scale multifamily duplexes, things of that nature. Ended up, we've got a small little triple net lease retail investment as well. But then I just realized the scalability and the long-term predictability of multifamily. So 100% focused on that over the past couple of years. So that's when I decided to leave the political realm in 2018 to focus, like I said, 100% on commercial real estate. Started my company, East River Equity Group, as well as working as a commercial real estate broker, focusing on investment sales. So that's just a little bit of background on who I am and where I've been.
I always think it's so fascinating because most people in real estate didn't always start there. I mean, it's very rare that you find somebody who just launched right into real estate immediately, in their career. And so it's always, I find it interesting how people and what the backgrounds are. And it's such a diverse background, coming from a political lobbying sort of organization into investment real estate and sort of just intuitively identifying that was a way to create generational wealth and to create some practicality in your life and to be able to leverage and to be able to exponentially grow your own results. And so, with that, I'm curious to know, because it's a challenge to go there. It's a challenge to, obviously, start your career in one realm and then transition and to pivot into something else. So I'm curious to know, someone like yourself who's been able to successfully do that, was there a time, or was there, an event or a couple events in your life that caused you to draw a line in the sand and say, look, I'm not going to live a common life. I'm seeking greatness. Is there something that happened, or was it a process that got you there?
I would say it was definitely a mixture of both. So I will say there's definitely a defining moment there, but I've always been obsessed with personal growth and seeing the results of a consistent day-to-day effort of bettering myself. But there is a time specifically in my life where I decided to kind of take things to a whole new level. And about 2 years ago, my dad actually passed away pretty unexpectedly and at a pretty young age. And I'm sure you've heard it a million and one times, but I can't say it. I can't say it enough, is that life is absolutely short. And at that point, I made the commitment to make sure I was sort of leaving it all on the field each and every day. And that's where I realized I was really starting to truly create velocity in both my personal life and in my business growth as well.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear about your dad. That's certainly not something that you want to hear, but it does. Sometimes I guess the shortness of life, I guess, and everything that we do, whether it's for us or for those that we love, we have to realize that life is not forever, and if we put off till tomorrow, what we said we were going to do today, tomorrow may never come, and it's a great reminder for us to really, face our fears. I mean, that's, our mind tells us that there's so many things that we can't do or we shouldn't do because, bad things might happen. But if you're not courageous enough to go past that fear, you're never going to experience, what life really has to offer. And so I appreciate you sharing that and being upfront, with that. So I'm curious, with that, what are you doing on a consistent basis? Really, you talked a lot about personal growth. You've become obsessed with personal growth. How are you implementing that into your life, and what are you doing to really grow yourself and to become more on a consistent basis?
Yeah. So one of the big things that I focus on each and every day is making sure that every action I take is either leading me forward or leading or a combination of leading me forward as well as everybody else around me. And so one of the things that I want to make sure that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is saying no to certain things. Saying no to certain things and people that don't align with my core values. So like I said, and it's a pretty simple answer. I just want to make sure that each and every day I'm only focusing on things that are pushing me forward as well as pushing the people around me forward.
So tell us a little bit about your core values and how, how those are constructed, how you were able to get to that point, and, just be curious to know a little bit of an insider look into Dillon's core values.
Absolutely. So I like you. I've got a gigantic goal and I haven't set a very specific number for myself yet, but I absolutely want to create a legacy for myself. And, so I've focused this completely, my actual core values and goals around making sure that I become better on a day-to-day basis. And I have focused that around making sure that I can have the absolute largest impact around everybody around me. And I think that comes specifically from a seek to serve mindset. So I've noticed throughout my lifetime, when I have that seek to serve mindset, making sure that I'm focusing on other people and not myself, that it's a complete win-win situation in the fact that I can help others. And then it all comes full circle, and that I've been able to help myself and grow throughout that as well. So my biggest core value is just that, that kind of seek to serve mindset that I've sort of instilled in myself. And I don't believe that I've always had it, but I've realized that that's what's truly created the most velocity in my personal life as well as my business life. So seek to serve value or seek to serve attitude is the best thing that I can say that's really, kind of given me that growth that I've had over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think if we get out of our own way sometimes, when we realize that, the more people that we can help, the better results that we will have. I think some people get so tied into, well, how much money am I looking to make, and how many,
Mhm.
deals am I looking to, acquire, or, how many X, Y, and Z. But really, you've got to focus on, well, how many people can I help and give
Of
without
course.
any expectation of return? Because people can tell when you're looking for, you're just looking for a transaction out of them rather than a long-term relationship. So I think that's a key takeaway for sure. So tell me about, you talked about saying no earlier, and you've really kind of honed that in to be really one of your core principles, to say no to things that don't fit your core values. How do you identify that, and what's a specific tactic that you use to say no to things that that may not align with the core values that you've set for yourself?
Yeah, I think it simply comes down to taking a look at, where I think is, what do I think are the benefits and downsides of each specific action that I'm looking to pursue with potentially a business partner, whether or not it's in my personal life. So I have a short little thing, or a short little list of questions that I have to ask, and what it comes down to is, if I can go through that questions and I believe, like I said, that it ultimately is helping to push me forward, helping to push that person forward, and I think it ultimately leads to a better benefit for the both of us and for the world as a whole. Then I will move forward with it. If not, it's something that I can just easily cross off the list, and realize it's just unfortunately there's not enough hours in the day to be able to do everything that you want to be able to do. But it comes down to having very specific, like I said, core values. Going through that, basically, it's just a simple checklist, and if it doesn't align with what I'm looking to do moving forward, it's something that I've had to learn to say no to, because at one point I was a yes man, and I thought everything that I could possibly do to help other people. um, Ultimately, you can't sacrifice yourself along with, with putting yourself out there to help other people, in the fact that, I want to make sure that I'm only taking the actions that are giving a net benefit to the most people possible. And sometimes that entails saying no to certain things and certain people that otherwise you would like to be able to say yes to.
So hypothetically, if I came to you and I asked you to be a part of something that didn't align with your core values, what would be an example of the way that you would respond and say, you know what, this just doesn't really fit for me? How do you do that respectfully, that Elevate Nation can take? Because I think the reason why I'm asking this is because a lot of people have anxiety with saying no. They're yes people because they truly want to help other people in general, and if they feel like they say yes, then they can help other people, and they're selfless in that way. But to a certain degree, if you say yes to everything, you can't really serve anybody. And so I'm curious to know, like, what would a specific response be from Dillon McGough?
Yeah, and I guess it all comes down to what specifically you're asking me to do.
Sure.
But one of the things that I've gotten pretty good at is sometimes you just have to be brutally honest, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some people, I guess in today's day and age, that there's a lot of sensitivity around that type of thing. But really and truthfully, I've gotten much better at making sure that sometimes, if it, like I said, it doesn't fit my core values, I'm just happy to be a little sometimes brutally honest, and letting that other person know. And what I've actually found through that is, oftentimes my decision to say no is respected on the other side as well, as long as I'm very upfront and honest about the exact reasons why I'm saying no, as opposed to trying to wordsmith things and potentially give some sort of excuse other than what I'm actually saying no for. If you can be upfront, honest, and give a specific reason as to why you're saying no that makes sense, you will find that for the most part you'll receive respect on the other side as well, and it's understood.
Absolutely. And it's all about showing respect. I want to make a little bit of a transition here, and I want to talk a little bit more about you and how
Mhm.
you operate on a consistent basis. So I'm curious to know, what is a habit that really is integral for you in setting you up for success on a daily basis?
110%. I guess you could probably call it a habit. I believe in my life specifically, where I have found the most success has been created, is surrounding myself with people that are doing more than me at a higher level. 110%. There's no doubt about it. I take to heart the saying, always make sure you're surrounding yourself. Well, always, if you're ever the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. So, it's probably not that difficult, but I always make sure that I feel like I'm the dumbest person in the room and I have the actual most to gain from that room. So that's where I've really, really created velocity in both my personal and business life, surrounding myself with guys like you. I actually moved down to Tennessee to be surrounded by a certain group of folks. And over the past year and a half since I've been here, I think in my own life, based on the criteria I've set for myself, that has really helped me to explode and move forward in a positive way. So surrounding yourself with just high level people at all times, people that you look up to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what they say about, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right.
And we have an opportunity of spending time with other high level people, whether they're in our direct circle or whether you're listening to a podcast. I mean, like, everyone's elevating their own, ability, their own potential through listening to this conversation because they're surrounding themselves with someone like you. But there's no excuse, and if you identify that, you've got some people who are not elevating you, they're not taking you to the next level, you've got to be brutally honest, kind of like what you said earlier. It's like, we only have one life to live, and it's not a long life. And you've got to be able to, you have to identify, where do you want to go? And your subconscious mind is going to be influenced by the people around you, by the books that you read, by the material that you study, by the actions that you take. And so that's a really great example. But also beyond that, I'm curious to know, you're surrounding yourself with people who you want to become. You're surrounding yourself with high level people who are going to help you raise your own bar. But who are some of your role models that you really kind of, you model your own activity after?
Yeah, just a couple, and these are by no means all the same personality type, that's for sure. But guys like Naveen Jain, the billionaire that started the company Viome, and I also like everybody's favorite uncle, Grant Cardone. And the reason that I like both of those guys is just due to the fact that they have these gigantic goals and they're not afraid to say it. Goals that other people may think that they're crazy for believing in. And these are guys that want to affect billions of people, and they're not afraid to say it. And so I've taken that to heart, and it's helped me to actually set goals for myself, just goals that I'm absolutely unrelenting moving towards, that scare me, and that hopefully other people think are crazy too, because I know if other people think they're a little bit crazy, then I'm probably on the right track. So just surrounding myself with guys that are just setting unbelievably large goals.
Yeah, I was first exposed to Naveen Jain. I went to 10X a couple years ago, and he was talking about his moonshot. I mean, are you kidding me? This guy says, I want to revolution. He says, I want to make, what do you say, disease optional? And he
Yes.
wants to revolutionize healthcare. I mean, if you thought you were thinking big, you're like, well, yeah, I want to acquire a few thousand units, or I want to build, I mean, that is another stratosphere. I mean, he makes even Grant Cardone look like he's not thinking big. I mean, that's
Exactly.
insane. And he's like trying to, he's the first company that's mining the moon or something like that. It's out of control. So what, if you thought you were thinking big, you need to multiply that times about 1,000 if you want to even get on his level. So that's huge. I mean, it's so important to be able to identify, well, who is it that's going to help you elevate your own thinking? Because the only limitations we have are our mind. If you don't believe something's possible, well, then it's not. But if you can stretch your mind to a point where that, really the references that we have are what we really act towards. And so I'm always curious to know whose role model, who are your role models? Because that's really, that kind of shows you where your future is going to go. But I appreciate you sharing that. What?
So sorry, I just
No,
want to
you're
say
fine.
it's so true that like you said, the only limit that we have is the limits and like the prison bars that we've created in our own mind. 110% true. And I think that has been the biggest benefit and focus for me over the past few years, is while I've had experience on the business side, I was not surrounding myself with folks that thought at those gigantic levels. And I think that was probably the one thing that was holding me back, is looking in my own mind and coming up with excuses as to why I could never get to that level. But immediately when you surround yourself with folks that are just like you in just about every other way and have been able to create these monstrous businesses, both personally and in the business realm as well, it really just gives you that confidence that you can go out and set those same massive goals for yourself. And it just comes from unrelenting hard work and surrounding yourself with the right people.
Well, we're going to come back to goals here shortly, but I read a book recently called Psycho Cybernetics, which is an outstanding book. If any of Elevate Nation hasn't read that, you need to go pick it up. But what he talks about is that human beings are goal-seeking mechanisms. So you either have a goal that you're working towards. It's like, if you have the desire and you put it in front of you on a daily basis and you're willing to be persistent and you're willing to be, committed to that outcome, it's just a matter of time before it becomes reality. And so, but the key is to set that in front of you, to set that desire, set that white hot burning desire, like Napoleon Hill talks about in Think and Grow Rich. And if you can create that, that's when it actually becomes a reality. But if you don't have those intentions, if you don't have those goals, other goals get planted into your mind. It's the most fertile ground on the planet, as Earl Nightingale says. And so you've got to be ready to realize that you've got weeds that are growing. So you've got to plant your own seeds, your own empowering, outcomes that you're seeking to be able to create that. So it's huge. It's amazing. So we'll definitely want to come back to goals here shortly. So what else? I mean, what's the most worthwhile investment that you've made, over the past couple of years that you've been making this sort of transformation as you're in yourself?
Yeah. So, and just to piggyback off what you said, you had a very specific word there at the end, yourself. Investing in yourself 110% is better than any brick and mortar or any other different type of financial investment that I've ever made. And it comes down to making sure that, first of all, you're doing your due diligence on who you work with, making sure that they are who they say they are, that they have the results that they've said they are. But one of the big investments that I've made is leveraging a mentor in the multifamily side of things. And I actually worked with Jake and Gino. They've been a huge asset in my life. And of course, these guys have been able to build up an incredible business on the multifamily side, and they've got such a solid emotional intelligence to be able to teach that as well. So instead of, and I did try to go at this on my own for a couple of years, and while I had a little bit of success, my true velocity didn't come until I truthfully leveraged somebody else that was doing more and at a much higher level than I was, that to allow me to sidestep all of the pitfalls that come with investing in multifamily, going at it on your own. So I think investing in yourself, just like you said, is absolutely by and far the best investment that you can make.
It is absolutely the best investment you can make. And I have a lot of people that talk to me about, they're up and coming and they're building their business, they're building their understanding, and they say, well, you know what, I've built up $100,000 or whatever, just some random number. And they say, well, what should I invest in first? And my first thought is invest in yourself first, because that's going to pay the longest dividends, the best dividends of anything. And it's something that you'll have forever. You've got to feed your mind, and investing in coaching and mentoring is so important. And of course, Jake and Gino are certainly friends of Elevate Nation. And so I definitely respect that. And so now I want to come back to goals. I mean, we just said we were going to come to this. You're talking about gigantic goals and some of the inspiration that you've been able to attain through your own role models. I'm curious to know, what's a goal that you're most proud of accomplishing over the past 12 months?
Yeah. So we actually, just about a month ago, a couple of partners and we just closed on a 62 unit owner finance deal out in West Virginia that we've actually been working on for about 9 months. And the reasoning that I'm so proud of it is because of the persistence that came along with this deal. And there was probably 3 or 4 times where we just thought that this deal was going to fall apart, and we really had to kind of rack our brains, get together and be creative and find a way to get it over the line. And so that's probably one that I'll be patting myself on the back with a couple of times here for a while. But yeah, over the past 12 months, I'd say that's the one I'm most proud of, just due to the persistence that came and the creativity that had to come along with getting this one over the line.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what did you have to? Because that's one of the big things I know for getting deals done. I mean, sometimes deals take years and
Mhm.
years, and it's like you've got to just come back to the table. If something doesn't work, there's another solution. So tell us about maybe one or two examples of how you had to be persistent in that, and what type of creativity did it require?
Yeah, so this was an interesting little market, Morgantown, West Virginia. It's been a great market. It's much A lot of the market's focused on jobs within the hospitals out there, and of course, West Virginia University is there as well. And they've got a large pharmaceutical company out there, but there's certain metrics that I've set when it comes to population growth, income growth, job growth that comes very close to hitting, but does not necessarily hit, but it's still a very strong market. And so we wanted to make sure, I love owner financing, of course. And on this deal, just originally the seller wasn't super interested in owner financing, so we had to get creative in the fact that we had to make it a win-win situation, making sure that the seller was happy as well as the fact that we are happy with it as well. So we went back with a couple of different types of owner financing proposals. Ended up getting some acceptance from the seller on seller financing, and then we went to the bank. And I will tell you, this is where it got difficult. So we had owner financing, but it wasn't nearly what the typical down payment is going to be. It was going to end up being a very highly leveraged deal if we were to only use the owner financing that we were offered at that point. But we had a great relationship with the bank through the actual seller. And so with working through the bank, it's an absolutely incredibly performing asset. They were very confident in the asset. So what they ended up allowing for us to do is use the owner financing that we had available, which ended up being about a 5% down payment. And they were so confident in it. It's a little community bank. They felt confident in us. They felt confident in the asset. So they allowed us to just have a 5% down payment. And that took a very long time, a couple of months, to be able to work that out with the community bank and the seller. So that was probably the biggest struggle, but we're pretty happy with it now.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned in challenging sort of deals like that,
Mhm.
it's like an educational process. You've got to educate not only the seller of what his benefits are in the circumstance of a seller financing type of an endeavor, but also if you've got another lender involved. I've found that it always makes a lot of sense. Like, don't just send over the package in an email and expect them to get it. I mean, you've got to educate. You've got to show the story. You've got to show, here's why we're thinking this way, and we want to get you on the same page, because your debt partner is not just a vendor, it's also a partner. It's similar to your equity in certain ways, of course. And so it's an educational process. You've got to show people that you're willing to put together a business plan and execute on that business plan. So I think that's a really great takeaway from your experience there. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
um, so tell me, so we're talking goals, we're talking gigantic goals. What are you most inspired and uncomfortably working towards now?
Yeah. So what it comes down to for me is being able to impact the absolute most amount of people that I possibly can in a positive way. And I would absolutely love to be able to tell my story in front of 1,000 people live, because I have and the thing is, what it comes down to is I'm so passionate about what multifamily has done in my life, and the long-term benefits that's been able to create for me. I want to be able to go up in front of 1,000 people live and be able to change their lives as well for the better. I've been able to do that in front of a couple hundred people, but I'd like to just continually scale that to the point where I'm affecting hundreds, if not thousands, of people at a time, and moving them in the right direction.
That's awesome, man. And I will tell you that right now you may be accomplishing that, because I think you're speaking to thousands of people right now through Elevate Nation. And
Absolutely.
so also I want to honor that, because I had the privilege of speaking at the North Star Real Estate Conference last weekend in Minneapolis. And it's such an opportunity to be able to contribute to people. And I really felt so blessed for that, because people sort of came up to me afterwards and really just thanked me and, really talked to me about how, my words really impacted them and really kind of moved them. It's like the 2 millimeter shift. Sometimes all you need is just a few words and maybe a story of your own background to be able to help people identify and have another reference towards what they can accomplish in their own life. So that's a great goal. And if there's anything we can do to help you further accomplish that, perhaps beyond Elevate, please let us know, but I know you'll do great at that.
I appreciate it. And it's such a win-win situation knowing that you've been able to truly impact somebody else's life. And on top of it, the amazing feeling that you get. So that's one of those goals that I've set for myself, that I want to stay in an uncomfortable position. And when I achieve that, next month it'll be, and I know I'm going to have the opportunity to have a ton of listeners on this podcast, but I want to do this live. I'll have the opportunity for about 650 next month. And then hopefully within the next 24 months or 12 months to 24 months after that, we'll be able to speak in front of 1,000 people. So
I have no doubt about it, my friend. So what's the, you've got such a passion, you've got such an intention for big results, for big things in your life, for gigantic goals, as we talked about. What's the driving force behind what you do, Dillon?
100% just leaving the world a little bit better than I found it. And I keep my legacy in mind at all times. And one of the big things is when I have children of my own in the future, I want them from day one to be proud of what I'm doing and the legacy that I leave behind. So if I can leave a little bit of a good dent in this earth when I leave, I will be more than happy. And I literally come to each and every day with that focus in mind.
Well, it sounds like what you're talking about for the future is leaving a legacy for your children. But if you had to identify who you work hard for today, or maybe even that is in the future, who would that be and why?
Yeah, I mean, my family, and of course my future children, and then like I said, when it comes to leaving a dent, I want to be able to impact as many lives as possible. If I can leave this world knowing that even one person benefited from something that they learned from me, I would be more than happy. And of course, that's not the goal that I've set for myself, but it's something that I consistently strive and think about each and every day. And I think that's the reason when I focus on that reason specifically, that's where I notice the most elevation, so to speak, in my journey, and that's where I've been able to create the most success. And that plays directly into the seeking to serve mentality, always focusing on the benefit that you can bring to others, and that comes around in a roundabout way to help you as well.
Yeah, and I've learned that some of the best ways to learn are through repeating other successes or repeating successes that I've experienced myself. But I've also learned that, when I fail, sometimes I have more learning than I would when I succeed. And so I'm curious to know, what's been a big failure that at the time felt like devastating, but then turned into something that really has served you beyond your wildest dreams.
Man, that one's tough, just due to the fact that I wish I could pinpoint it to one specific failure or mistake. I've had an absolute ton of those, and I've gotten better over the past few years of being able to try to piece together the positives of each mistake and trying not to make that same mistake again. But I would probably say back when I was in my senior year of high school, just a little bit of background. I was absolutely obsessed with hockey. I played from the time I was 4 or 5 years old up until I was about 18. And I just remember it was all that I wanted to do. And I went out for a team over in Canada that I had been in conversations with for a couple of months. And all I wanted to do was play professional hockey. And I got to this point where I was just so obsessed with the next step and not making any mistakes that each and every time I went onto the ice, anybody that was looking at me, scouting wise, of course, if I made the smallest little mistake, it absolutely ruined the rest of my game. And what that got me to the point of was I was always dwelling on the last mistake. And so I wasn't focusing on what I needed to do to be successful on the next move. So I'd make another mistake. And that led to the point where I ended up getting let go because of that, and decided to end my career and not move forward with hockey at that point. So one of the big things that I have learned is making sure to find a specific nugget in each and every failure. And I didn't know this when I was 18. It took me years and years and years to find the good in that specific failure. But what it came down to was finding a golden nugget in each failure. And then just, if it doesn't affect you for more than 5 minutes, I mean, you can't think about it any more than 5 seconds. That I try to, boil that down a little bit more. But so that's probably the biggest failure that led me in the right direction. But I think in a roundabout way is what I'm trying to say is always make sure in every mistake that you make, try to find a little bit of a golden nugget. And if it really doesn't have a long-term effect on you, do your absolute best to just leave it in the past and forget about it and just move on to the next step. That's all we can do in this life.
Yeah, and you either win or you learn. And I think that's the
Learn.
growth mindset that Elevate Nation definitely embodies, because, it's like if you just dwell on your failures and you just live in that state, you're never really going to elevate past that. And I think it's also important to realize, like, I could really relate to that about the whole, I was thinking about, not making mistakes and making sure that I played perfectly. And sports are such a great analogy for life and business and time at times. Because I recall, back in the day playing basketball, being so conscious of, I've got to play perfect this evening. I've got to do everything exactly the right way because, these people are going to be here watching me. And you can't get into a flow state if you're just thinking about, playing perfect, because look, you're going to make mistakes. And the other thing too is, like, where focus goes, energy flows. So if you're thinking about not making a mistake, what you're actually doing is you're embedding a command, not make a mistake, right? So then you start thinking about making a mistake and you can't actually, bring your greatest talents out. So there's a ton of gold nuggets and gold wisdom there. So appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
So
And there's a reason why a lot of people say that athletes especially, is they're the best when they're just with their buddies at home and competing. And they're never thinking about anything other than the next thing in front of them, because there's never that anxiety of making mistakes. And you're not afraid to make mistakes in front of a couple of buddies as opposed to these large crowds. And it's easy to see. But when you're 18 years old and you don't have that maturity, it was definitely very difficult and hard on me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes years and years to be able to reflect on that and say, well, what can I get from that? Because it's hard. I mean, it takes a long time to grow up. I can definitely say myself, like in my whole 20s, I mean, I went through this whole thing of, like, I just felt like I had all this misinformation my whole life, and I couldn't figure out why I was frustrated, And so
Right.
it comes from these type of experiences that take years to really kind of metastasize and marinate before you really truly develop them. But I think it's key for you to be able to kind of introspect and look within and say, well, what did I experience, and what are some of these things that are maybe holding me back in different ways? You could have decades of time to really not even realize that, your failure on the hockey court or the hockey rink, caused you to, act a certain way. And you're still acting a certain way based on how you were when you're 18 years old. It's absolutely amazing. So
Absolutely.
you got to be able to, you got to journal, you got to meditate, you got to talk to people, tell people about what's bothering you. You have to dig in and find these things and get rid of them, because if not, they're going to hold you back for the rest of your life. So it's huge.
Agreed. 110%, my friend.
I love it. So what we're going to do here is we are going to transition into our rare air questionnaires, our rapid fire section. Reason why we call it the rare air questionnaire is because you're climbing Mount Everest. Most people gave up. I mean, we really just got started on this path, but most people, they can't breathe, their legs are tired, and they really had this great idea. They had this gigantic goal, and they got there, and I'm like, wow, it's kind of cold here. So it's a metaphor for what we're talking about with Elevate Nation. It's not easy to do what we're doing. It's not the quick fix. It's not, shortcutting and getting rich quick. We're talking about lasting results. And so what I'd like to dive into is, what's the most impactful book that you've ever read and why?
Yeah. And I've, on a different podcast, I ended up saying a different book, but I came back to Principles by Ray Dalio. Have you had the opportunity to read that one?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for those listening that don't know about Principles, Ray Dalio is a hedge fund billionaire. He started the hedge fund Bridgewater Associates. And the main theme there is that finding the truth, of course, is the best way to make decisions, and that ego, emotion, and blind spots and they end up preventing you from discovering truth. So that was the big takeaway that I had, and the very specific steps to take to be radically open-minded and things of that nature when you're making decisions and seeking to find the truth. So I've found that that's probably the absolute biggest impact that I've had from a book in both my personal life and my business life as well. So it ends up being a catch-all. So I highly recommend Principles by it's the Ray Dalio story.
Yeah, I mean, that's one that I'm gonna have to read like 5 times because it's so
Right.
packed. I mean, it is so it's like, what is it, 500 pages, and every single one of the pages is like, you need to be taking notes, you need to be highlighting, you need to read it like 5 times. But one of the big things, my takeaway from that was that you've got to develop your own principles,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to be able to say, well, what works and what doesn't work, what has created success and what's created failure within my own life, within my own business, within my own real estate portfolio, within my own relationships, and make it comprehensive. And if you can do this, some people say, well, man, that sounds robotic, but if you can do this, you can remove yourself from overthinking about making certain decisions. At that point, you can serve in your greatest capacity. You can bring your greatest talents to the world. So I'm with you on that. I love that book too.
Love it.
So what's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis? We talked a little bit about habits, but outside of some of the things that we've already talked about, what's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, and I've already harped on this a little bit in our conversation today, but I cannot tell people how important it is to make sure that on a daily basis you're always surrounding yourself with folks that are doing more than you at a higher level. And like I said, I've already talked about that, but it's the best way that I elevate my life on a daily basis. It's the best habit that I have. It's the one thing that stands out so far above and beyond what everything else that I've used to become successful. And so it's the one thing that I always bring up. And I'm not somebody to recreate the wheel. I'm not trying to find the next big idea. What I want to do is there's plenty of proven ways to be successful that people have already walked the path of. And if you can surround yourself with folks that have a very specific blueprint, you can create that success for yourself, whether it's in business, whether it's in your personal life. So that's the one that I'm always going to give when it comes to specific habits in your day-to-day life that are really going to actually elevate your success.
So surrounding yourself with A players and making sure that you're consistently and you're intentionally surrounding yourself with people who are causing you to become greater. How do you also elevate others around you at the same time?
Yeah, and this is also something we've chatted a little bit about, and it comes down to absolutely having a seek to serve mindset and really expecting nothing in return. And that's one way to elevate others, and then you won't believe how often that actually comes around and helps you in a roundabout way as well. So seek to serve. That's one thing that I have found over the past couple of years that, really, and having a true intention of seeking to serve and providing as much value as you possibly can, it always comes back and helps you as well. So
Yeah, and having no expectation of anything in return is the key to that, as far as I'm concerned, because a lot of people can say, "Well, I'm seeking to serve," but they truly have that that ulterior motive, or
of
they're
course,
looking to accomplish something as a result of that relationship. And you know what? As corny as it sounds and as woo as it sounds, people can feel that energy if
they
you are
do.
here to receive something back. So just deposit, 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 and if there's ever a time to withdraw, I mean, as long as it helps that other person, as long as it helps elevate their results as well, then maybe it's that time to consider that. But I'm 100% with you, and that's an amazing distinction. So Dillon, we have we've reached the end of our time together. It really it's come so quickly. But how can Elevate Nation stay connected with you?
Absolutely. You can get a hold of me through my Instagram. Make sure to check out Dillon_McGough, DILLON_MCGOUGH, or they can just get a hold of me through email at Dillon, DILLON, McGough, MCGOUGH @gmail.com. Happy to answer any types of questions, whether that be personal growth, real estate. Love getting the opportunity to talk to other folks that are trying to continually push themselves day in and day out. And I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully I provided some value to some of your listeners today, Tyler.
I have no doubt about about that. And, you know, it's such a good opportunity. And the reason why I ask you that question is how can people stay connected with you is because it's about, like, really the theme of our conversation today is about surrounding yourself with people who are going to help you elevate to the next level and continue to ride that ascension. And so, you know, this is a great opportunity for Elevate Nation to reach out to Dillon and to build that relationship with him, you know, seek to serve him in whatever way, without any expectation of anything in return. But, you know, the key to everything that we're talking about here today is to learn. You know, one of the things that, you know, we've talked about earlier is, you know, before I got on the show, is we were talking about education plus action equals results. And, you know, you've got to apply. You've got to listen to this show again. You've got to take notes and find those gold nuggets, apply them immediately, because the only way to really, you know, learn and to really anchor in your understanding is to take action, take massive action. So, you know, also share this with a friend. I mean, take about this discussion and teach this to someone else, because that's another way for you to anchor in your own understanding. Share this episode. But until next time, Dillon, thanks again. I really appreciate you being here.
Hey, the pleasure was all mine, my friend. I really appreciated you having me and look forward to reconnecting again real soon, Tyler.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, have a wonderful day and we'll talk soon.
See you, buddy.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit tylerchesser.com.